Self-thinkers, this is the first book review by your boy Mr.Cogfit. So I've asked if you guys wanted me to do a book review for the many books that I've been reading related to science, nutrition, health, fitness, philosophy, etc. And many of you have told me yes, you would. So I think it's really good to start this review series off with one of my favorite books ever, The Critical Thinking Toolkit. Now this is by Galen A. Foresman et al. Because there's more authors than that. So I'm going to talk about some good, some bad, and then my final thoughts on this matter. First I want you guys to really consider getting this book. Just my personal opinion. It's really good for foundational knowledge. I think the one first good thing that I said was it's very good for building foundational knowledge when it comes to logic and reasoning. And I say that because of the first few chapters. It teaches you how to look at arguments, how to look at logic, how to break down logic, arguments, and categories. This is fundamental logic, and I took the class of logic, and it gives a good, concise overview of many of the topics that I learned in depth. So I feel like you guys should really look into buying this book if you guys really want to learn the basics of logic. Now the second thing is, I think besides the first few chapters where it talks about logic, reasoning, arguments, etc., chapters 5 through 8, this is the second good thing. Chapters 5 through 8, I think that they're magnificent. So chapter 5 goes over the informal fallacies. 6 goes over induction, which is it's a brilliant chapter. I feel like it's one of the best in the book. 7 goes over errors in cognition, how we think, how our thinking can be obscured, how our senses are not always reliable. I think that's essential. I think it's one of the most essential ones in the book, besides 6, 7. And then if I really have to say, if I really have to choose a favorite, chapter 8 by far was the most in-depth, the one that made me reevaluate everything, the one that made me think so much, the one that really made me question everything that I knew, and that chapter is on justification. And that chapter is really that's a dangerous chapter. That one is life-changing. If you guys read this chapter, it is fucking life-changing. I'm not even playing with you. I'm not making anything up. I'm not even trying to overhype it. It makes you wonder why you think what you think is true. It really questions why you believe what you believe. It's one of the best. No, it is the best chapter in the book. I think I said chapter 6 was the best one. No. Fuck what I said earlier. Chapter 8 is the best one. And I think the last good point, the third good point I really wanted to make was it's really a good foundational piece for building critical thinking. Because I really feel like critical thinkers need to understand argument, logic, rhetoric, categories. You need to understand the fallacies. You need to understand induction. You need to understand especially justification. And you truly need to understand the errors in your reasoning, how to see things from different perspectives. I feel like that's essential, and I feel like this book goes over many of these concepts really well. It's a really good piece to have. It's something that a lot of you guys should contemplate having. It's one of the best out there. I really feel like you can't go wrong getting this thing. Unfortunately for me, hyping the shit out of the book, I need to state 3 not so good, if not bad, things about it, because I want to be real with you guys. I want you guys to take the book into context. I really feel like it's tough for beginners. So for someone like myself who's a philosophy major, I took logic. I had many of these debates and arguments. I read a lot of the literature surrounding philosophy of science. It's very easy for someone like myself to go over a book such as that and gain some good information and supplement my knowledge from that. So it's just like me picking up where I left off, right? But for someone who's completely new to this, many of the chapters can be confusing, such as chapter 8, because it's such a big chapter. It says a lot of things and it makes you think really deeply. So you kind of need to be used to philosophical literature. You need to be used to many of the big names that are going to pop up in this book. You kind of need to be used to the framing of certain questions and answers. It's different. It's not like reading a short story. It's not like reading a nonfiction book. It's different. It makes you think differently. And the only way you could get a handle for that is by reading philosophical literature often. So, and like I said, I felt like The first couple chapters were excellent for building that foundational knowledge of logic and reasoning. The real all-stars were chapters 5 through 8. Unfortunately, the last two chapters really lag behind. The one that I was really excited for, chapter 9, when it comes to science, was pretty weak. I really didn't like it. It was pretty much the bare bones basics. It didn't go over things in depth like it did for, chapter 8 or chapter 6. It just wasn't strong. And that could be due in part because these are philosophers, not scientists. So, of course, their expertise in science might not be that well established compared to the other things that they were talking about. Because if you look at chapter 8 and then you look at chapter 9, there's a stark difference in quality. Just from my opinion, there's a stark difference between quality. And chapter 10 was, for my personal opinion, I don't like the postmodernist kind of philosophical thinking, the Marxist kind of style of thinking, but it's good to be introduced to these styles of thinking and thought. But, I feel like they're largely unnecessary. There's stuff that's overly critical. There's stuff that kind of contradicts what we talked about when it came to science and induction and stuff like that. It's stuff that it gets you to think in a different way, but it can be taken to extremes. That's why I personally didn't like chapter 10. Number 9 kind of disappointed me. And I felt like if I got you guys all confused, so the first bad thing was it's probably not that good for beginners because you have to read it in a different type of light and you might not be used to a lot of the topics in question. Number 2, chapters 9 and 10 were pretty weak. I personally didn't like them. They could have been better. And then the last thing is that there wasn't a chapter 11, because there's 10 chapters in total. There wasn't a chapter 11 to bring all the concepts together so you can apply each and every skill cohesively. So I felt like that was hugely problematic, and I'm really confused as to why they left that out. Why they didn't put that in there, like a chapter that teaches you the basics of how to put these skills together, because ultimately these are tools and skills that need to be cohesive and put together. You can't just have one over here, one over here, one over here, one over here, one over here. You need to use them together. You need to learn how to use them together in the right situation, like the right circumstances. You need to know how each of them feeds into one another. And I felt like that was something that was just missing from the book, and I feel like that could have been something very, very good especially for beginners, because like I said, one of the criticisms that I had was that it's probably not beginner friendly because a lot of people are not used to these concepts. Well, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you guys really want to read this, the link for it is in my description. And yeah, I think next book I'm gonna go over is going to be The Ape That Understood the Universe. I think that one's going to be the next one I talk about as far as evolutionary psychology and cultural evolution. So I'm not just a nutrition and fitness guy. I read philosophical shit. I read psychological shit. I read nutritional and fitness shit. I have a whole bunch of different interests. So thank you guys so much for this series. It allows me to really open up about my different interests in many different books. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Please comment any recommendations for any books related to critical thinking that you guys might like and suggest to other people, or that you suggest that I read and could go over and review. Well, anyways, guys, have a great week. Peace.